Hello there, I'm Blackbright, broadcasting out of the UK into your homes. Welcome to my channel. First time you're passing through, it's a thumbs up, it's a thumbs down, it's the share and the subscribe. Sometimes when I think about my topics, it's not something that I plan. And this evening I was upstairs on my computer working on my magazine, and it suddenly occurred to me, what can we do about racist police? People can lock them up and they can throw away the key if they want, and they can chastise them and call them this and that. But what is the answer? What can we actually do about them? The thing is that when the police are recruited, they are under quite a vigilant screening process. So people recruiting them are not really, it's not something that you're likely to pick up. I mean, from somebody who's quite clever, you've got all the right answers and you've had your own kind of diversity training or equality training, you're going to know what is the correct thing to say. And the problem is with racism or race in this country is that people are afraid to talk about it. People are not allowed to say how they feel because they're going to be judged, they're going to be criticised, and they're going to be hard done by. So what do you think happens to police officers who have some inherent racism or covert racism or innate racism or a racism inside them that they don't quite understand how it got there? And they're afraid to talk about it because it could cost them their job. So what do you do about police officers who are racist, but they don't know what to do with that racism apart from venting it in a way that is unhealthy, unprofessional, and results usually in excessive force and possibly death or crippling someone? Now, they do have training, like I said. They have diversity training and all of that. But how does that teach someone who is racist? All you have to do is learn what the answers are. It's a tick box exercise. So you learn what the answers are and you respond to those answers, and yes, you pass. I remember working in a situation where we had to do a test. Well, we had to pass the unconscious bias test. And one of my colleagues said, oh, I couldn't understand it. It was beyond me. I got my mate to do it. So she's never going to quite understand what unconscious bias means. And when she interacts with me, she's not going to really know the innuendos because she couldn't be bothered to do the exam. So what I'm saying is that you will, if something means you either get a job or you don't, you're going to learn what you need to learn to get through. And okay, in an exam situation where it's online and you get some people to help you, nobody's going to know whether or not you've actually done that course yourself or if you've elicited help. So a police officer who is racist does the whatever training they need to do, and they go through, the kind of questions you pose in different ways to see how they are going to respond. Now, is that really going to get to the truth of how that police officer actually feels by nature of fact? Or is it all you're going to get is a contrived answer? Something that he knows you want to hear? I really believe that what the police officers need to do with black people, especially black men, I believe they've got to go head to head without fear of reprisals. The only restriction or limitation is that neither of them are allowed to touch each other, and neither of them are allowed to have a gun or any weapons or anything. The two of them just go at it head to head. And the police officer who is racist, he says whatever he feels and whatever he wants to say to that black person. And that black person says whatever he wants to say and how whatever he feels to that black police officer. There is no reprisals on either part. The police officer doesn't kind of think, oh, you wait till I get you on the outside. It's not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be a genuine, venom, whatever it is, whether it's the hatred or what. The police officer needs to get it off his chest exactly how he feels when he sees a black person. Until that happens, and until he does that and realizes that, yes, that black person looks intimidating, that black person sounds intimidating, but is he or she actually intimidating, or is it my perception? And I think the police officers need to go at it in that way to get it off, to get rid of that fear that black people are a threat, and that their perceptions that black people are a threat, or their perceptions that black people are criminals, which raises their suspicion in the first place and results in the the disparity between arrests and stops and searches and all that kind of stuff. It needs to be done. And I don't know if police officers would be willing to do that, or would they be afraid to say what they feel? I mean, when you have a wife and a husband and they have an argument and they go at it, really go at it, effing and blinding and all sorts. And I'm not talking about abusive relationships. I'm talking about when a couple, and you've seen some couples on these television screens, when they really go at it. And even though they go at it, neither of them feel intimidated. They feel free to express themselves openly in what they perceive as a safe environment because they know each other. The problem with black people and the white people, or the problem with the white police and black civilians that they're stopping on the street, they don't know them. They don't know them from Adam. They just know they're black. And the problem is that, and this isn't all police, I'm talking about racist police, remember. I'm not talking about all police. And this is where it needs to be challenged, because if a white police officer, because he doesn't know that black person he's seen on the street, he creates a dialogue in his head, and he actually in his imagination, he's already being proactive. Police are trained to be proactive. And if a police who's trained to be proactive feels threatened because they've seen a black person who looks quite intimidating and they happen to have a gun, what do you think that proactive nature is going to do? If they're under threat, they shoot to kill. And that is what I believe is happening. I believe that because they don't know black people, and which racist is going to want to know black people? Really? They want to get as far away from them as possible. If they had their way, they'd get rid of them and put them all in a camp somewhere. So it's about them looking and trying to understand, what is it about black people why I feel threatened? And like I said, it's not all black people or white people, because you've got black and white people in relationships. And sometimes when you see some of these white girls with some really intimidating looking black guys, and the black guys are following them around like bloody rabbits, you kind of think to yourself, as a police officer, wouldn't you think to yourself, well, he can't be that intimidating if he's with a white woman and he's and she's not intimidated by him. So why is it, as a white man, I feel intimidated by a black person? And I think those dialogues need to happen. I think honesty needs to be. I don't think police should be censored about what they want to say, how they feel, because they're not going to get to the roots of it if they're forced to behave in a certain way. Because all that does, it pents it all up, and when they go out there, they just take it out on the next person that comes by. So the training should include that honest dialogue. Police shouldn't be told, oh, look, you can't behave this way. I mean, we're told time and time, we're censored all the time, aren't we? We're censored, well, you can't say this word. You can't do this because you're going to offend a black person. You can't use this word because you're going to offend a black person. You can't, so they're constantly censored. And if you're constantly censored, who is the real you? How does the real you come out if you are being curtailed 24/7? And especially if you're in a government job and you're forced to behave in a certain way because that is how you're trained to behave. And because you're an officer of the law and you're there to protect and serve, you cannot be perceived as having any bias. But supposing you do have bias, the 100% of police officers, they're not all unbiased. If they were all unbiased, we wouldn't have them killing black people at whim. We wouldn't have the likes of Derek Chauvin kneeling on George Floyd's neck. We wouldn't have that. So it's obvious, and even in our community at large, you're going to have white people who don't like black people. But they can't say that. All they'll do is give you a kind of sheepish look. And when they see somebody like the death of George Floyd, they're going to think, oh, thank God for that. That's another one out of the way. They're not going to have any empathy because everything they feel is being suppressed day by day. And they're not allowed to get it out. And that's the one thing I tend to do, especially because I'm quite sensitive. I do engage in with racists, but I kind of, when I say engage with racists, they don't know that I know that they're racists, put it that way. But what happens over time is that I give them permission to be themselves. Like that, remember I told you about my neighbour and he was telling me he's going to, well, not where I live now, where I used to live. I was the only black person on the street and my neighbour said he's going to get his pit bulls on me and he was going to do this and he's going to play his music all night and I don't know what the F you're doing here and, I'll soon get you out of the neighbourhood and all this kind of stuff. But I allowed him to do that. I allowed him to get rid of it and to tell me what he wanted to tell me. I didn't say, oh, you're a racist, oh, you're this, you're that, because I don't learn anything when I'm suppressing that anger and that frustration. But over time, because of my behavior or whether the fact that I ignored, whatever I did, I don't know what I did because it wasn't contrived. All I know is over a period of years, that same man was taking out my bins for me. He was helping me with anything I wanted to do. If I needed anything. I mean, it just turned around. I didn't do anything. But what the difference was is that he got to know me. He got to know me as a black woman, yes, but more as an individual, as a human being. And he realized in getting to know me that I wasn't a threat. But what happens is people do not get an opportunity to engage in that way. Or what happens is if a white person is hostile to a black person, you get this big dialogue, anger, separation, and racism and this, and you shouldn't say that, and you shouldn't do that, and you should be this way, and you should be that way. And what happens is they don't learn anything. All they learn to do is to suppress what they actually feel. And so we're kind of living in a society where we've got ticking time bombs. Where black people, they have to tiptoe because they don't want to offend a white person just in case, because they know that they're a minority in this country. And you've got white people who can't say, because depending on what job they're in or what they're doing or what their role is in the community, they've got to be careful. So until people confront without violence, violence isn't necessary. They need to be able to get it out. And then there needs to be like a mediator after they finish getting all out to actually analyze where is all this coming from? Why are you feeling like this? What has led you to feel like this? What is it about this individual that makes you feel like this? And vice versa. And I think that in an uncanny way, I think that is the only way to deal with racism with police, because police are racist because they are afraid. Police shoot to kill because they are afraid. Police use excessive force on black men because they are afraid. They perceive that black men are going to overpower them, and so they do whatever they can to stop them, even though that threat of being overpowered is perceived. It's not actual in the mind of a racist or somebody who feels as though they're a white supremacist. So until they have that dialogue in a safe environment, I don't think that they're actually going to reflect on why they feel the way they do and what has contributed to them feeling the way they do. I don't know. I was just thinking about it. Yeah. What was I going to say? Yeah, I did say telling them that they can't feel the way they feel is not healthy. Curbing innate frustrations is not healthy. It leads to mental issues. Can you imagine if you're living with somebody and say an abuser? You might not have been in an abusive relationship yourself, but remember we saw, what was it, Sleeping with the Enemy? Can you imagine living in a house where somebody is constantly abusing you and you cannot say anything? You cannot tell that man to F off or get lost because you're afraid that he's going to come and beat you up or retaliate or whatever it is he's going to do. So can you imagine, you've got a set of people who feel that way. They want to say something, but they can't because of the repercussions, because it means they're going to lose their jobs or whatever the repercussions are. Does that actually solve the situation? Well, that woman in Sleeping with the Enemy, in the end, she escaped. But supposing you cannot escape, supposing you have to face up to those fears and whatever it is that is bothering you about another individual or a race of people, how are you going to confront that? Especially when you don't understand what it is yourself. You need to ask them, it's about understanding what makes them racist. Who told them that black people were threatening? Where did they get the idea from that black people were threatening? Or what makes them feel threatened by black people? How did they come to the conclusion that they need to be suspicious about black people? Who fed them that narrative? Is it from how young they were? Is it their parents? If a black person and a white person have an altercation and do not know each other, they can only imagine what the other person is going to do. Police officers are trained to be proactive. The proactive stance is to kill or be killed. To a racist police officer, it is a lawful opportunity to kill under perceived threat. So the problem we have with racist police is the perception they have of black men in particular that makes them react the way that they do. So it's that perception that needs to change. And how do we change it? The only way we can change it if there is that confrontation without any fear of threat, without any fear of repercussion. They go head to head. And at the end of it, when that police officer has said what he wants to say to that black person, and that black person has said whatever he wants, and they've actually exhausted that frustration and all that anger. And then they can kind of think, oh, you didn't try to kill me. But then, in a contrived situation, they may feel as though he didn't kill me because they weren't allowed to and they were in that contrived situation. So to a certain extent, it may or may not be effective. But they would need to have a mediator. But this is about getting it out and getting it off of your chest. I don't know if it'd work to the extent what I would like to see. I would like to see the police go at it with a black man that they feel intimidated by. Somebody like George Floyd is big, and yet just go at it with words and get through that. Get through to the point where you're no longer intimidated by that person. You are no longer threatened by that person. And at the end of it, you can actually reason with each other. That's what I would like to see. So they actually get it all out and they realise that that black person isn't going to kill them, isn't going to do anything unreasonable to them. A black person just wants to defend himself. He just wants to bloody go home. He just doesn't want to be treated unfairly. And most of the reasons why black people want to kind of hop, skip and jump out of the way is because they know that a lot of the police who stop them are racist. So they don't want to hang around. And yes, a police officer might call it resisting arrest. They may call it, obstructing the course of justice. That black person just wants to save his bloody life. So you have to get, police officers need to understand those dynamics. Maybe in a fair fight, a black person might beat up a police officer. I don't know. It all depends who's stronger than the other one. But that still doesn't mean that you have to have that perception just because somebody is black that they're threatening or that they are a threat and that they are a criminal. So therefore you have to treat them in a certain way. So like I said, until we've had an honest dialogue between racist police and black men where there is no fear of reprisals on either side, they will be unable to face their fears. Police need to feel safe to share their racism without fear of reprisals. The only restriction is that they cannot touch each other. These emotions can then be examined. Black people may sound or look intimidated to some white people, but it doesn't mean that they are intimidating. So I don't know what you think about my idea. I was talking, actually I had some help from my daughter, to be honest. But because we were kind of talking about how we train police officers, because it's fine to say you are going to train police officers, like I said, in diversity and helping them to understand different cultures, but you cannot understand different cultures. And nor should you be expected to. What they should be teaching is treating people like humans in a fair, dignified and respectful way, regardless of colour. That should be the training. But anyway, that's all I've got to say for now. Bye-bye.